Good evening. My name is Dan Dukniak. I am the general manager at the Waukesha Water Utility, and you are here at the Franklin construction for the construction open house for the Great Water Alliance. Again, we're going to be focusing on the construction that's happening within the city of Franklin, so I'd like to welcome you tonight. Tonight we have Mayor Steve Olson, who will do a Franklin introduction in a few minutes here, or right after I get done with this. My name again is Dan Dukniak. I'm the general manager of the Waukesha Water Utility. I'll be talking about the need for a reliable water supply. Katie Richardson, our program manager, she will be talking about the route and communications. And then finally, we have Jeff Champion, who is the construction manager. He will give an overview of the construction that'll be taking place in the city of Franklin and what the residents within the city of Franklin can expect with that construction. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started here. This is an online meeting due to the safety concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully that's over soon and we'll be meeting in person sooner rather than later. But because we have an audience here tonight, you're a larger audience, you are all muted. You can submit questions anytime using the question and answer box that's located at the bottom of your screen. So if you don't see it, if you move your mouse, you will see a Q&A box and you will be able to type in any questions that you have at that in that section. We will have a live question and answer session at the end. However, some questions were submitted ahead of time, so we will try and answer those if we can throughout the presentation. The meeting is being recorded and will be available on greatwateralliance.com, hopefully sometime early next week. So if you have neighbors or other residents that are interested in hearing what was said and what was talked about tonight, and they weren't able to attend, they will be able to go to the greatwateralliance.com and find that recording. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor of Franklin, and Mayor Olson, and he will have a few introductory comments. Mayor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it very much. And I welcome the Franklin people that are on this webinar. I'm so pleased that you're doing this because it gets you the firsthand knowledge of what's going on and what's going to be going past your homes. So it's important, and I appreciate you being part of this. Also joining us tonight is the city engineer, Glenn Morrow, and 4th District Alderwoman Sherry Hanneman is also on the call. So the horse's mouth here is Dan Dukniak, but if you have other questions that relate to Franklin that may or may not get answered tonight, feel free to contact City Hall, Glenn Morrow, and we'll be happy to get your answers for you. So thank you very much, and back to you, Dan.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and we appreciate you taking the time out tonight to be on this call. We really do appreciate that. It really means a lot to us.
Just so everybody knows, I'm going to have to duck off, but try not to be rude, but that's the way it's going to be.
That's okay. You have enough night meetings. I'm sure you do. Okay, I'm going to start talking about the need for a reliable water supply for the city of Waukesha. Next slide, please. We have the Waukesha water supply. There's a number of challenges that we have in the city of Waukesha. We are currently dependent on the deep sandstone aquifer, similar to where the city of Franklin was until the early 90s when they switched over to Lake Michigan water. Majority of the communities in southeastern Wisconsin utilize the deep sandstone aquifer. There is a layer of shale, Makokata shale, which is the red layer that is beneath the ground. The slide on the right has basically a chunk of the earth that's pulled out from underground, from the surface to underground. And you can see that red shale layer. That red shale layer is a thick layer of rock that prevents water from naturally percolating through the soil and recharging the deep aquifer. Therefore, when you utilize water in the deep aquifer, like Waukesha, Franklin, Oak Creek, a number of communities in southeastern Wisconsin that have been, you start to draw down that aquifer and create a cone of depression. That cone of depression is down more than 350 feet. And when it's down more than 350 feet, you run into water quality issues like radium. Radium is increasing and we exceed the radium limits. in our water supply, and we need to come into compliance with a court order by September of 2023. Also with that drawdown, it's not just radium. There are other contaminants that we are running into that also are concerning for us if we would stay on this water supply. So we went through, and there's also a need to protect wetlands and streams, and that drawdown, use of that deep aquifer does have an impact on wetlands, rivers, and streams, but one of our alternatives, utilizing shallow aquifer water, would have a significant impact on wetlands, rivers, and streams. So we looked at we went through a study. We looked over 20 years. Next slide, please. We looked at, we did a bunch of research and analysis, looked at more than 14 alternatives, studied 6 of them in depth, created an environmental impact statement with the help of the Department of Natural Resources, and came to the conclusion that Lake Michigan was the only reasonable water supply for the residents of the city of Waukesha. It is not only the only reasonable, but it is sustainable for the long term because we're able to get into that recycle and reuse mode where we're able to pull water from the lake, utilize it in the city of Waukesha, treat it to very high level, and then return it through the Root River to Lake Michigan, having that water be sustainable for the long term. It is protective of the environment. We don't have a significant amount of impact to wetlands, rivers, and streams. And in fact, the Root River, the DNR has been looking for ways to get additional flow within the Root River for a number of years, since back in the 60s, where there was actually a plan to build a lake along Oakwood Road they would pump water from Lake Michigan into the lake, and then they would return the water through the Root River. So there's been a number of challenges with the Root River, and this is a way for us to gain additional flow during those low flow periods. And it is also the best solution for the ratepayers of the city of Waukesha. So there was a number of phases that we went through. The first was, as I alluded to, was working with the DNR to get approval for the Great Lakes alternative. And as I said, we studied 6 alternatives in depth, and we created an environmental impact statement. That process took us over 5 years. Number of additional technical memoranda was created as a part of that, and ultimately led the DNR to the conclusion that the only reasonable water supply for us was the Great Lakes alternative. So they informed the Great Lakes Compact Council in phase 2 that they believed that we had an approvable, that the state of Wisconsin had an approvable application. And that went to the Great Lakes Compact Council, and the Great Lakes Compact Council is made up by a governor appointee from all of the Great Lakes states. And there are also 2 appointees from the 2 Canadian provinces that border the Great Lakes. They are not on the Great Lakes Compact Council, but they also provide input into the process. So after 6 months of review by the Great Lakes Compact Council, a number of different public meetings and hearings in different states, they did in June of 2016, they did approve our diversion from Great Lakes to provide water to the city of Waukesha, and they agreed with us that the only reasonable alternative for the city of Waukesha was a Great Lakes alternative. There was a question that was submitted with regards to development in Waukesha, because there was an article in the journal about a large upscale apartment complex that was planned. The Great Lakes Compact Council did approve an allotment of water for the city of Waukesha, but more importantly, they fixed our service area. So the city of Waukesha has fixed boundaries in where that water can go. Within those boundaries, there is a limited amount of growth and redevelopment that will occur as part of this, and within that service area, and that was accounted for within our allocation. And this is one of those areas where there is availability for additional growth, and that's where that apartment complex is. There's also questions about whether that was competing with the Franklin development near the Franklin Field, near the ballpark that's around Franklin Field. We did look into that, or look at that question, and while the two developments are similar in nature, they're not necessarily competing against one another. The development in Franklin is extremely close to the Milwaukee-Chicago corridor. There's a lot bigger audience for an attraction for residents that want to live in that area and want to have access to that corridor. The city of Waukesha did complete a housing study recently, and it did conclude that we needed a significant amount of apartments within the city of Waukesha, and this is one of those developments that's helping us work towards achieving that. The apartments that are being constructed are their focus is on residents within this county of Waukesha who actually live and work within the county. So there's a little bit different audience for those apartments versus the apartments that are being built in the city of Franklin. So once we did get the compact approval, we needed to negotiate a water deal. So initially we were going to go with the city of Oak Creek, but the city of Milwaukee came to us at the last moment and was able to save us a significant amount of money, over $200 per year per resident. So the city of Waukesha decided to partner with the city of Milwaukee, and we negotiated a water supply deal with the city of Milwaukee. Once we had that deal in place, we finalized the routes and the locations for all of the infrastructure. There are 7 different communities that we are working through as we install this infrastructure for the pipelines, pumping stations, and reservoirs. And there was a question that was submitted that asked if we were paying for the right to run the return pipe through the city of Franklin. And the answer to that is no, we're not paying to run the pipe through the city of Franklin. Waukesha, by state law, is allowed to install infrastructure within the right-of-way, just like the electric utility or the gas utility, telecommunications, etc., Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. For example, the city of Franklin doesn't pay for the electric wires to run through the city of Oak Creek to get to them to provide service, or Franklin or Muskego don't pay for MMSD, the interceptor sewers, to run through Oak Creek to get through to collect the wastewater from Franklin or Muskego. Similar to that, other communities do not pay to install infrastructure within the right-of-way. But we do work with the communities, and we are required to install or repair any damage that we do and bring the roads back to the level that they were at or better before we started construction. So that's why we work with the communities. We try to look at roads that potentially would be within their program for reconstruction, and we try to work with those communities so that we're going down roads. And since this is a larger pipeline that's being installed, we will most likely be, repaving majority of the roadway. So we do work with the communities, and when we are looking at that phase 4, and we are looking at the routes, and we are looking for the infrastructure, and we make sure that we get their input when we're looking at the routing for all of this infrastructure. Finally, we have to pay for this. So Waukesha went to apply for clean water loans for the return flow side for the pipeline and pump stations that are bringing the water back. And then we were able to get a WIFIA grant from the EPA. That is a long-term loan that is over 38 years at a very low subsidized interest rate that will save the ratepayers in Waukesha about $1 million a year. So we're trying to keep the rates as low as possible, and that is another area where there is less competition. The water rates and sewer rates in Waukesha will be a lot higher than they are in the city of Franklin, just because of the fact that we're building such a larger infrastructure project. So if someone is looking at that, Franklin would be the more attractive city with regards to the water and sewer bills. Finally, the water pipeline, this is where we're at. We're in phase 6. The water pipeline construction has begun. We are about to enter construction within the city of Franklin. So we're having this open house to inform the residents of what is happening. And so that brings us to the next phase of the presentation, and that's the route and communications. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie Richardson, the program manager, She will be taking us through this. So Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dan. So as Dan mentioned, I'm going to be going through a little bit of the route at a high level and some of the different ways that we're going to be communicating with the residents, yourselves, and others throughout the course of the program, and different ways you can reach out to us to get more information as well. So the return flow route starts in the city of Waukesha, goes from the clean water plant there through the city of New Berlin, Muskego, and then makes its way into the city of Franklin along Ryan Road, and then down south on 60th Street to the corner of Oakwood and 60th. And at the Oakwood site, there is a reaeration structure that is in a small building that we'll show you a graphic of, that is about the size of a 2-story house that will be operating very quietly. That's where we're going to be adding oxygen back into the water before we discharge it to the Root River. And there is some underground piping on that site as well. And there's the Waukesha Water Utility owns about 75 acres in that area to keep, there'll be some homes across the street, but there won't be any homes right adjacent to that. And that'll be maintained as it'll look a lot like it is, except for with this new additional building. The return flow pipeline might be a question that you may have. Why do we need to return this water? And as Dan mentioned, as part of our approval with the Compact Council, we are required to take the same volume of water that is used in the city of Waukesha and return it back to the Lake Michigan watershed. So there's a number of positive reasons to do this. One of them is that it is going to make sure there's a net zero impact on the lake levels in the Lake Michigan watershed. It also, as Dan mentioned, increases the base flow of the Root River in low flow times, and this is beneficial for the habitat in that area and the fisheries along the Root River that are going to be east of where this outfall site is. At low flow scenarios, there's going to be an additional 6 inches of depth, and that is beneficial for the fish that need to spawn and come back into the river. This gives them more water to work their way upstream. Additionally, there might be a concern. Oh, yes, Dan.
Katie, there was a comment that your audio is weak. So could you speak up just a little bit so that we make sure that the residents can hear?
Yes, I apologize. Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, my apologies. So just to rehash, we are adding 6 inches of base flow during low flow time frames in the Root River, and this is going to be beneficial to fish that want to spawn farther upstream. And there might be a concern, the flip side of that is if it's adding 6 inches of base flow at low flow, how much is this going to impact the river levels if there is a flooding situation or high water levels in the Root River. And our outfall site is going into the river south and east of where the Root River historically does flood. We are aware of that, but we're coming into the Root River after that. And also we've done some modeling to make sure that when the base flow of the river, so when there's a lot of water flowing in the river, the more water there is, the wider the river gets. And our impact is going to be almost immeasurable. It's less than 1/4 of an inch in those high flow time frames. So there should not be any measurable impact on the Root River because of this outfall during high flow situations. But there's a beneficial impact during low flow. So I want to just touch a little bit on the schedule. The construction of the return flow pipeline has begun in the city of Waukesha at the Waukesha Clean Water Plant, their wastewater treatment plant. And that work is moving through New Berlin and Muskego currently in the city of Waukesha, but on this contract package 6 in New Berlin, Muskego. We're anticipating that the completion of this part of the return flow pipeline project will be completed in 2022. So there'll be some work that you're going to see in the near vicinity. That's why we wanted to have this open house to kind of explain what you're going to be seeing in the near future here. And then they'll be continuing on of what's called open trench construction. And Jeff will explain a little bit about the difference between the open trench and the trenchless. Additionally, there's going to be some construction starting at the outfall site. And as I mentioned, the outfall site is going to have some pipe put in from the reaeration structure to the Root River, and there'll be an outfall structure itself built near the shore of the Root River. And then there's going to be a small 2-story-ish home-sized building that will be adding oxygen back into the water before it discharges into the root. And that construction will be in the next 2 years as well. If you have any more questions for us, one of the most important things we want you to take away from this presentation today is how to get more questions answered as they come up. And the best source of information for that is really the Great Water Alliance website. The Great Water Alliance website, greatwateralliance.com, has an interactive route map. This map is going to have little markers of where construction is. At each marker, there'll be pop-up information about what that type of construction is. You can see the example here, Trenchless Technology, where we are constructing a little different than the open trench, or it'll tell you if it's open trench. We're going to try and give you an approximate time frame in there. And if there's any traffic notes, if there's going to be a lane closure, there's going to be a flagging operation or a proposed detour, that information is going to be on that route as well. And that'll be for all of the pipeline projects that are being put in for the Great Water Alliance. So if you travel from Franklin, somewhere else in between Franklin and Waukesha, you can go to that map and look for where the construction is happening. We also on the greatwateralliance.com website have an area set up just for the City of Franklin residents. You can sign up there for construction email updates. We are sending out email updates on the construction for the whole program approximately every 2 weeks. It will have information about some of the other areas, but that's going to have your most up-to-date schedule. It'll also be on the website, but if you want that information just to get delivered to you, signing up for those construction emails is great. We'll also have any notes about detours, blow-ups of the detour maps if needed, or lane closures, things like that on the Franklin in your area page as well. If, for example, we need to work, some situation comes up and we need to get out of the way of an area really quickly, and we ask permission from the City of Franklin to work either later at night or potentially over a weekend if it would be beneficial to have us in and out of an area. That type of information is going to come in the construction email, be on the website, and be located here. Also, that in your area section will have any recordings from this open house and any future open houses as well, if you need to look at something or want to share with your neighbor. We also have a few other different communication channels where you can get information about what's happening with the program. We have a hotline you can call and leave a message, and we'll return your phone call within 24 hours. We have an email there. If you have a question you want to send to us, you can email us and we will get back to you. Also in that same time frame, which we aim for about within 24 hours. If it's an emergency, we'll make sure that's noted in the email so we can get back to you as quick as we can. We also have social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel. The YouTube channel houses a lot of the videos and information we have about the program history, if you're interested in any of that. And the social media we use as a way to draw your attention to the website if there is something that is coming up, or like an open house or some other event that was a groundbreaking or something like that we want to share with you. We'll do that through social media. We also publish an e-newsletter about once a quarter that has information about what's happening with the program and updates on how things are proceeding. Might be articles about the WIFIA funding that Dan was talking about, or groundbreakings or upcoming program updates, just depending on what it is. Occasionally, we will use direct mail. Those of you that live along the route should have received a postcard in the mail from us with the information to register for this open house. And we'll do that on occasion if there's something that we want to make sure everyone along the route sees. That we'll use social media and the direct mail to really make sure that it gets distributed. We also might have more open houses along the way. We're going to see what happens with the construction and what is needed. And we'll have an open house and we'll advertise in a very similar manner that we did for this one if we need to do that again. When the crews are in your area and there's construction going on, there's also a few additional ways that you can reach out to us and communicate with us. As I mentioned, if there's something and you're trying to get a hold of someone, if it's a safety emergency, obviously call the local authorities first and foremost. If you're trying to get our attention and something's happening, like you need access to the area in front of your house, or you're concerned about your driveway getting shut down and are you going to have access maintained, you can always call us and we'll have the construction management team reach out to you, make sure that that is all coordinated. We're going to maintain access to your homes. But there's also going to be inspectors out on site that will have the Great Water Alliance vest on. So if something comes up and you're looking for somebody to talk to in the moment, please look for the inspectors with the Great Water Alliance logo on their vest. You can see it on the screen here and in the corner of the presentation. It's that 3 loops and it'll say Great Water Alliance. There's also, we're going to, Jeff get into a little bit more detail about the timing of this, but we'll be using door hangers as we approach your homes as well, and homes and businesses will be using those to indicate that the construction is getting, much closer to your home, and we'll provide you some information, different ways to get a hold of us that way. And there's also going to be signage. You'll see normal roadwork construction with signs indicating that there's going to be lane closures or detours or work zones in the area. So we want you to look for those as well. That's another way we're going to be communicating with you. Throughout this program, safety is our #1 priority. We want you to be safe. We want to make sure the contractors are safe. We want to make sure that there is no accidents that we can prevent as part of this project. So please make sure that you're watching for barrels and signs. As we said, it's going to be work zones along the side of the roads. It could be lane closures. There's going to be flagging operations going on. So please make sure that you're slowing down and watching for your safety in those areas. Please obey the signs and flagging operations. And, just make sure, we want everybody to get home at the end of the day. So we want everyone to just be very careful. Additionally, Jeff's going to talk a little bit about this too, but we want you to be careful around the equipment that the contractors are using. If you do have a question, again, find someone with the Great Water Alliance vest. They can show you where to stand safely and answer your question. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our construction manager to just give the construction overview.
Thank you, Katie and Dan. Like Dan said, I'm Jeff Champion. I'm one of the construction managers that'll be working on the project while we go through. We're ultimately responsible for quality and control and working with the contractors to make sure that we get this project completed as quickly and as efficiently as possible and to the best installation that we can. We will be working with the local municipalities and with the residents to make sure that everything works well, and we'll work with you as necessary. Just a high-level view of the specifics of the return flow pipeline as it enters into Franklin. We do enter from the west along West Ryan Road, travel east to 60th Street, and then south on 60th to Oakwood, and then east for a little ways to the Outfall Facility. As we enter from the west on Franklin, there will be some road impacts, but we try to stay out of the road as much as we possibly can just to maintain traffic and access. The pipeline does head east on Ryan Road, like I said, until we get to Martin Road. And that is on the south side of the road. Just east of St. Martin's Road, the pipeline does cross Ryan Road and run along the north side until we get to 68th Street, where we cross back again to the south side of Ryan Road. And then the pipeline then travels south along 60th, along the east side of the road to Oakwood, where we travel on the south side of the road to the outfall structure. Here we see a few locations along the route where we show some possible challenges or road crossings or the like. Here looking east on Ryan Road at Loomis Road, and then also looking east on Ryan Road at the intersection of St. Martin. This is where one of our crossings would be at Ryan Road. And then again, looking south on 60th at the intersection of Airways, where we are on the east side again. Like Katie mentioned a number of times, the The Outfall Facility is similar to a two-story resident house. This is just a rendering of what that facility is going to look like. As you can see that it's with the car in the parking lot there, that it really is not a very large facility, and we try to keep it so it's very inconspicuous in the neighborhood area, and it won't stand out very much at all. In preparation for getting ready for this project, Waukesha Water Utility and the City of Waukesha have conducted an extensive pre-qualification process, and they set out competitive bidding to bid the project. As a result, S.J. Lewis was found to be the most responsive bidder to that process, and they were awarded the contract to construct the return flow pipeline in this area. S.J. Lewis is a very capable contractor. Their work includes all storm sewers, sanitary sewers, water mains, force mains. They do their own horizontal directional drilling and their own jack and boring. They are capable of jack and bores up to 144 inches in diameter. They also do their own dewatering, wells, pumps, and dewatering socks. Clearing and grubbing, soil erosion control is also part of their responsibilities, as well as trucking and traffic control.
Jeff, there was a question about, do you restore the grass and landscaping as well? And I think that would be a good time to answer that question.
We can answer that, and the intent of the project, like Dan said earlier on, with restoration of roads and such, we do also restore the grass and the landscaping to like new condition or like existing conditions to the extent that we possibly can. There may be some conditions where there may be some plantings in the right of way that we may have indicated that will need to come out, and those would be smaller plantings. We do try to protect like large trees in the 12-inch diameter and larger. We've made special measures. That is some of the reasons why we cross back and forth across the roads a couple of times. So we try to make every effort to restore landscaping back to better than like new or better than new if possible. Like we talked, the Trenchless Technologies, there are a number of Trenchless Technologies that we're using, mainly to help minimize traffic impacts and avoid some conflicts like the plantings that we just discussed. Boring machine installs 48, the boring machines that we are going to be using will be installing 48-inch steel piping under intersections, roadways, and other type of obstacles that just while you're in the area, use caution. It may look like there's no activity, but there is much going on underground. There's, like you can see in the photos here, there's a number of activities that are happening, and a lot of times the activities are happening in a tunnel type condition where you won't see a lot of work going on, but be reassured that work is progressing along well, and we're trying to get through that as quickly as we possibly can. The door hanger notifications, Katie touched on this briefly. Door hangers will be left in a legal and visible location on the property. Legal and visible, that means that we need to not use the mailbox, so that you will not find these door hangers in mailboxes. They will not be hung on a fence. The most viable location for those is on a door, and particularly the front door or the main door of the residence. We cannot go onto property to place these door hangers. So just maybe the front door is a door that may not be used very often, but if during construction, if you try to pay attention to that front door, this is where you'll find these hangers. We've asked that the contractors distribute hangers 14 days in advance of the street closures or when work is close to the area. And then also 3 days prior to any restrictions to property. As for instance, if a contractor is going to be crossing your property and perhaps either blocking or taking out your driveway, that 3-day notice will give you some advance notice and possibly some direction and indication on what work's going to be done. 1 day prior, there will be a follow-up notice just to make sure that you're aware and that the contractor continues to be on schedule. And again, that notice, all those notices will be hung on a accessible noticeable front door or the like. That concludes my portion of the project. I can turn the presentation back over to Dan and Katie for any questions and answers that may have come up.
Sure. Dan, there's a couple that came in as we were talking. One question, a great question about the outfall site and the actual discharge to the Root River. You've probably seen some of these discharging into a lake or river before. The water is going to enter below the water line. It won't be easily visible to the public because in the rendering that Jeff showed, that's going to be up on the hill, and then our entry point is going to be down low near the river in the valley in that area on the property owned by the Waukesha Water Utility. So it is not going to be easily visible. And then there was another great question that came in about whether or not we're going to be notifying the school bus contractors. And we are working with the school districts and other the transit system and fire and police to make sure that everyone is aware of when we are in certain areas, so that if their routes do need to be changed or if something needs to be accommodated, we can do that. We also had another question that came in early about the large oaks along in between 92nd and Highway 100. And I think Jeff mentioned this, we are going to be protecting the trees that are 12 inches and larger in diameter. Also, right at that intersection of 92nd and Ryan Road, we are doing some of the work on easements that we've already obtained because of the narrowness of some of the right-of-way along Ryan Road. So there is portions where we're going to be working behind the trees as well to stay away from them on easements that we've obtained. And I should have mentioned too, when it talks about the school districts, we're also going to be notifying the Indian Community School as well, making sure that they're aware of any detours that are required or the construction in their area. They'll just have the general information as well.
Katie, just one more thing on the discharge.
Sure.
The discharge being at the or below the water level, just want folks to understand that there are 500 wastewater dischargers in the state of Wisconsin, and 94% of those discharge into rivers and streams in the manner that we're talking about. So it's not anything that's new. People probably have seen these discharges and don't even realize that they are. But it is something that you might see some riprap or something like that around where the discharge is, which are larger rocks. But that's all you'd really see. You'll see the exit of the pipe and some rocks.
Thanks, Dan. We also had another question come in about the discharge building emitting any noise or odor. And so the discharge building is going to be built such that the noise should be very, very minimal. How we're re-aerating this water is it's going to go over a series of very small drops. So it's going to kind of go down what looks like a number of mini steps to add that water back in. But there's going to be HVAC systems. There shouldn't be any odor. It should be very minimal noise. in the vicinity of this reaeration structure.
Yeah, the only goal of that structure is to add oxygen back into the water. So like Katie said, it just goes down those stairs. So it would be like you'd hear potentially from a fountain, but once you get far enough away, you wouldn't hear any of it at all. And with regards to odors, this is fully treated water that will be, that would have gone into the Fox River, that will be entering into the Root River, so there would be no odors associated with it. I don't think we have any more questions that I am seeing.
Right.
And did you catch Glenn one that said, don't forget to
Yes, I
notify
did.
the-
Yep.
Okay.
We will be notifying the Indian Community School as part of our notifications.
Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions, we really appreciate all of your attention tonight. There's a number of different ways that you can contact us, calling our hotline and leaving a message there, sending an email to info@greatwateralliance.com or through social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can contact us any way you want. Those are monitored regularly, daily. We usually do try and get back to you as soon as possible. I'm sorry, we had Pat Brust. We have one more question that came in. I see the company doing the work isn't from Wisconsin. Was there a serious attempt to keep the business here in Wisconsin? Pat, absolutely there was. And we have requirements on the contractors that I believe it's 30% of the work has to be from Wisconsin or be from Wisconsin, and the 10% has to be from disadvantaged businesses. And the contractors are well exceeding that. I believe they are over 60% of the work and workers are from the state of Wisconsin. So we're very happy with that. While we would have loved to have gotten a contractor that was based in Wisconsin, the fact of the matter is we pre-qualified the bidders, and state law requires us to give it to the lowest responsible bidder. The S.J. Lewis was considered a responsible bidder, and they were the low bidder, so they were awarded the work. But again, I want to thank everyone for their attention tonight. Again, there's different ways for you to contact us: hotline, email, social media, and we'll be with those. Like I said, those get monitored daily. We will get back to you as soon as possible. And again, if it requires a phone call from me, I will be more than happy to get back to you. So just we will end this meeting now, and thank you for attending. If you have any questions, again, you know how to contact us, and we wish everyone to have a good night. Thank you.